Wrightstown School Board member resigned. Michael Mullen wrote a short resignation letter effective on May 2nd. Comes nearly 2 weeks after a vote to oust the former Wrightstown School Board president, Angela Hanson-Winker. The recall was triggered by a petition after a claim that Hanson-Winker initiated an investigation into the former superintendent without making the board aware of any allegations. As school board clerk Tony Decker, who certified the recall petition, had enough signatures, also announced he's resigning at the end of the month. Hanson-Winker has submitted a complaint to the Wisconsin Elections Commission regarding the recall petition that Decker certified.